everybody, app builders. I'm Scotty, and with me is the man who needs no introduction, I'm sure. Sorry, what was your name?
You can call me John Sundell.
John Sundell. There we are. There we are. I didn't realise John was that good looking. There we are. That's
Oh.
Mr. Paul Hudson, thank you for coming and doing a story session with us at App Builders. Something we've been doing it for a few years now, and seem to get on quite well. So hopefully we won't ruin it today.
It is my pleasure. I'm looking for some tough questions that I'm sure you'll grill me on fully.
So I normally start with a couple of opening questions that are prepared in advance to get things going, but actually I'm going straight to the boards today to some of the questions that have been coming in from the attendees. So here we are from Vlad. Quick joke straight from the top of your head.
Quick joke off the top of my head. Okay. What is orange and sounds like a parrot? A carrot.
Okay. Maybe we'll go back to my questions now then.
Oh.
Maybe that's the only way to do it. Oh, okay. So, all right, Paul. So we all know you as the teacher and the trainer in hacking with Swift, but just before we get into some specific technology questions and things that people are asking, I'd like to know, how did you first get into software development?
I was one of those really boring geeks who got in at a very young age and then became increasingly laser focused on exactly one thing. So by the time I was 16, all I wanted to do was be a software engineer. And so I did my GCSEs in the UK, focusing on software. At 18, my A-levels, even more focused on software. And at 21, I got my degree in CS. So I was laser focused on computing science for a long time, which is a perfectly valid path to get into. But I would say it took me a long time to undo the damage of being laser focused on software engineering. I ended up with a second degree in English literature and a master's degree in classical studies. So basically trying to broaden my horizons and enjoy the more beautiful things in the world.
Excellent. So actually, we had a question in the chat from John Fox, one of yesterday's speakers. He said, if you could go back in time and tell your 21-year-old self something, what would you have told yourself? I think you might have just revealed that to us, but
totally buy Apple shares. When I was 21, it was 2001, and so that was when Apple was sort of tickling upwards a little bit. The iMac had just come out; they were getting somewhere, but it was still early days for them. So absolutely buy Apple shares, many as you can.
And one more question from me, just because firstly I have to realize that any interview I do is totally selfish about dealing with my own fascinations, and we'll deal with these attendee people, in a little bit.
They can wait.
yes. Let's just keep this going for a moment. So, from your long career now, obviously, because you're an old man, not as old as me, but
Ancient now, yeah.
It's tell us a favorite war story something from the trenches of software development that if you a horror story or a success story, something that in your career is just jars or sticks or you love to celebrate.
I wouldn't say I love to celebrate it. Certainly a turning point in my life. Now that I'm older, I can look back in retrospect and see these things for what they really were. I remember I was in Switzerland. This was in Switzerland, curiously enough, in Zurich to meet UBS, the bank. They were looking to come on board with my company as a client for the company, to sign a very large deal with us for a license. And they said, what we really need is this one feature. And of course, we didn't have that one feature. So I spent the whole evening hacking away, through the morning hacking away, and delivered it the next day saying, here's the feature. And they signed the contract. And I remember thinking really clearly, yeah, I totally nailed that. I'm great. And they signed the contract. Hooray. But looking back, I'm like, that was a really dumb thing to do. I mean, like really, on so many levels, a really dumb thing to do because, was the software, was it scalable? Was it tested? Was it maintainable? Was it flexible? No, not in any way. And a whole other ibbles out there. None of those things. And all that to try and sign a deal. So I think it gives me a chance to retrospectively look back on my career and think, yeah, that might have seemed cool at the time. That and chugging Mountain Dew, but nah.
Chugging Mountain Dew, that's it's definitely you're a real pro developer. Obviously, we've established at this point.
I actually bought Bill Gates's book years ago, The Road Ahead. It's like 1996, something 97, talking about how he saw the vision for the future. And I genuinely thought what I should aspire to be. You know, the kind of person who coded through the night, slept under the desk, never showered, and ate cold pizza kind of thing. I thought was the dream. It's not the dream, folks. If you are like 18 to 19 right now and you're thinking, yeah, no, that's not the dream. Healthy work-life balance and enjoy the world for what it is.
Excellent advice. I think we should just stop there and move on.
Move on, yeah, forget software.
Okay, so you've been working with Swift UI since literally day one that it was announced and released.
Yeah.
So we've had almost a year now of that, and I suspect there's not many people who have spent more time looking at it and hacking it than you. I mean, there are a few others around, I'm sure, but you have to be up there on the top of that list somewhere. So generally, you know, 1 year in, how are you finding it? What are your thoughts and opinions right now?
So yes, I've been since day one working with Swift UI to the point where going back to UIKit feels a little bit like going back to Objective C. You're like, whoa, view did load. What's this? You know, which is strange, but it is great fun to work with. And I remember writing the intro to my Swift UI book last year because I got out the door very quickly. I was flying out the door, Swift UI, Swift UI, Swift UI, Swift UI. I wrote the intro to it, and one of the things people asked me was, should I learn UIKit or Swift UI? And I think August last year I wrote, you should learn UIKit. At this point, Swift UI is not documented. There aren't enough answers out there. There aren't enough apps built out there with it and so forth. And now that we are a month-ish away from WWDC, my answer has changed. Because if you start learning today, if you start today from day one, you will finish your beginning steps December time. By that point, iOS 14 will be out. SwiftUI will be the standard for Apple development for new projects. And I encourage folks to check it out because it is a lot of fun to work with. I mean, it's crazy fun to work with. You can make beautiful things like lightning fast. And like, wow, that was actually enjoyable to just have fun with and experiment with and build things with. So yeah, I recommend folks really check it out and try it and explore and push it and break. Just so much fun to work with. So I really want to encourage folks to try it out.
So I mean, we're doing this session, we're 6 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that away from WW 2020.
Exactly.
So you really feel that this year we're going to see that transition from it being something that you can do some bits on the side with to being the main focus for iOS development going forward?
I certainly think new projects will want to use it. It's where Swift was at the same time. Swift 2, when Swift 2 shipped, most folks who want to use it were using it. We're of course maintaining lots of Objective-C code, but people weren't saying, yes, I want to write this new thing in Objective-C. They weren't doing it. They would rather jump into Swift and accept that Swift 2 would break stuff and Swift 4 would break stuff and Swift 5 would break stuff than have to go back to Objective-C again. And Swift UI is such a huge step in comparison. The things you can do with it in a handful of lines of code that would take 20 or 30 times more in UIKit. It's astonishing. And I did a workshop for Try Swift World last week, and we're building this app to do. It was hotels around the world, places to go and see, and we said, okay, let's make this thing have a card style effect, just like you have in the App Store. And it was like just 4 lines of code, and it just looks instantly fantastic because you can have this extraordinary control over the way things work, which you have not got in UIKit. And today, of course, there's stacks of frustration with Swift UI around things that you can't do because of it not being available. For example, table views, super far away, it's like 4 lines of code, but you say, well, how do I change the separator insets? And well, you can't. And that's frustrating for us because we want the complete control over stuff. And that's going to change. I have no doubt in 5 weeks' time, when WWDC finishes, we're going to have SwiftUI 2 or 1.x, whatever they call this next version, with stacks and stacks and stacks of holes filled, many, many holes filled. It'll be the first time when all of Apple have known about SwiftUI. So MapKit will be SwiftUI. Safari View Controller will be SwiftUI. Image Picker, SwiftUI. They'll all be working on a SwiftUI port of their controls. There's going to be a huge jump forward. So yeah, folks who are learning today from scratch now will finish end of the year, start of next year, the junior skills. SwiftUI is a great, great choice at this time.
So we do have a question in the chat room from Thomas about what are you hoping for SwiftUI in 2020? I mean, I think you've sort of partially just expressed what you think is coming, but if you were if you had the opportunity of, it's a bit late now because it's not done now.
Hey, SwiftUI team, if you're listening, let's do this.
If we could take you back in time and sit you down with the SwiftUI team and say, look, next year, folks, this is what I would like to see. What would be on your list there?
I have filed many radars with them, and I've met most of them too. They're lovely people, and they're working so hard. And there aren't very many of them either. Obviously, top of the list has to be compositional collection views, because they are wonderful. I mean, Steve Breen, if you ever see this, you beautiful, beautiful man. You did a knockout job there. It's lovely. I'd want that in SwiftUI. And it would look astonishingly beautiful. I've no doubt about it, because SwiftUI generally is concise. Compositional is beautiful, put two together. That, if nothing else, just that, right? And of course, text views. I'd like to see those. Kind of text views right now. It's a bit of a clangor. But really, what I think is not just more UIKit controls. Yeah, I want UIKit controls. Of course, I want MapKit as well, and I want the Safari services and so forth. Is UI testing completely rethought? Because you got to think about it. The number of folks who knew about SwiftUI ahead of time was very, very small. It was a tightly controlled group of people who weren't talking much to everyone else. So how many folks knew about it? A handful of accessibility people, a handful of Mac people, a handful of iOS, a handful of watchOS, whatever, handful of people. I want to see, what if the whole testing team, there's not very many of them, but the whole team got behind SwiftUI. Could they do UI testing purely as data? Don't launch simulator, don't click buttons and then see what the result is. SwiftUI is all declarative. Does this thing, this layout with this data, have 5 buttons? When this button is pressed, does it do this thing? They could do that entirely as just pure data models, and it would make extraordinary differences in testing. And that's, by the way, is exactly how React works, which of course is SwiftUI is very heavily inspired by. React has a virtual HTML DOM in which it renders things into it and says, is the result this? Are there 3 paragraphs of text? Yes, there is. Boom, test passed. It doesn't launch a web browser and render it all. That'd be very, very slow. So I hope we'll see that. But that's a really big ask. And Brian and friends on the XE test team are already very, very overworked. So we'll see.
Cool, thank you. And so, I mean, now say like 10 months, 11 months, whatever long it is into SwiftUI, and looking back now, what do you understand now that is fundamental in the way you see SwiftUI that you maybe wish, if you understood at the very beginning, would have made learning it easier? Is there anything that you could now give to people who are just coming to SwiftUI and saying, look, if I'd known this at the beginning, my journey would have been easier than it was?
Well, the reason I managed to write a book so very quickly was because I paid through the nose to stay above the venue. So I would literally walk downstairs with a wall of SwiftUI questions, speak to the SwiftUI team, get them answered, go upstairs, write up my answers, and then rinse and repeat 3 or 4 times a day for the whole week, which is why I'm, of course, gutted that that isn't happening this year. So I was able to get questions and answers from the source. I wasn't like, this right or not? It was like, yeah, this is right, do that. So I get things out of the way very quickly. I was able to get my concerns and confusions out of the way very quickly. One thing I have found is how I've changed the way I teach SwiftUI, because I'm realizing there are a handful of things that if you grasp these things, then you really start to see how SwiftUI is working behind the scenes. And the most critical one I encourage folks to try out is using background and padding. And I tweeted about this in the very first week of DubDub, saying, look at this, check it out, it's important, folks. But I'm really hammering it home today on my new stuff, because if you do some text, hello world, then padding, then background, you'll get sort of a large red square around your text. We use background color red. If you do background first, then padding, the result is different. The order of your modifiers matters. So I'm telling folks very, very clearly up front now, you've got to think about your modifiers and what they're doing. And when they progress from that one, the next thing I say is, hey, try the offset modifier. See how that works. Because that will offset your text to one side, but only for the rendering of the text. All the rest of the modifiers get put somewhere else. So you can get sort of text here and background color here kind of thing. So I encourage modifiers. That's what really is changing a year on, I think.
Cool. So, I mean, obviously, your fundamental role at the moment is being a teacher. You teach the community. So what is it about teaching that you love? What makes you, I mean, you're obviously very excited about not just the technology, you're excited about sharing that technology. Either that or you've had far too much Mountain Dew this morning, one or the other. So what is it about teaching that excites you? What is it that makes this such an attractive thing to do?
I don't think of it as teaching most of the time. If you come to a workshop I am running, like I am wandering around desks, talking to folks, looking at the code, reading the code, providing some feedback and suggestions, that is what I consider hands-on teaching, because you can't just sort of dip in, dip out like that. You've got to really get alongside someone and make a difference to them. What I do is kind of just broadcast my discoveries, broadcast what I'm trying out, broadcast what excites me right now, broadcast what I'm loving right now. When you're reading my articles, when you're reading or watching my videos, what you're seeing is, wow, Paul's really excited about this thing right now. And that's it. That's why I've written about Mac OS so much, because I had a massive Mac OS phase in my life. I'm going to write Mac OS, everything, AppKit, everything. Bang. I loved it so much. It was great joy to work with. That I went on to WatchOS. Like, oh, WatchOS is so cool. I want to do more WatchOS. So like the stream of my brain is literally what is Paul excited about right now. And I get super excited about stuff. I love it. And I dive into it and I go as deep as I can. I ask thousands of questions. I break stuff again and fix it and da-da-da-da. I love it. It's just an extraordinary childlike joy of building things like Lego and then smashing them again and rebuilding them better and then smashing them again and building them even better. I just love it. And all you're seeing really is the output of me writing down my finished product and shipping it to the world. What you aren't seeing, by the way, I'd add really, is all the rejects along the way. I've done this thing, oh, this is cool. Oh, no, that's terrible. Burn that with fire. And eventually what you finally see, it's great product, great project, whatever it is. That's like version 5 or version 6 of my thought process. I'm trying things out all the time.
So really, if someone wants to get Paul Hudson to write about something, they just need to wrap it up in something shiny and put it in front of you.
Maybe it's not necessarily the shyness that affects me. I think about things like a chance of impact. Is this going to be an impactful technology? And I've been wrong a lot. So is Apple. You know, I remember writing about iBeacons. iBeacons are great things. Look at this. Wow, it recognizes your phone's just here. Wow, very clever. And it's like meh for the rest of the world. And Apple obviously got that wrong as well. I do my best.
So just moving on a little bit, obviously you put out a lot of material for people to read, but actually that's only any good if people can find it. Now, if hacking with Swift is often a #1 Google search result. So I guess a lot of us who might be indies and have to market software and whatever else would say, well, how do you do that?
So like I said, I'm trying things all the time. I'm making a very, very large amount of code. When you think about your average coder job, if you are an intermediate coder or a senior coder, whatever you are, a coder in your company, how much time you're spending writing code from scratch is very, very small. You go into lots of meetings, doing lots of code review, grooming your backlog, looking at doing stand-ups, lots of things that aren't literally writing code. And it's my only job is to sit and write Swift and play with Swift and have fun with Swift and explore Swift and push Swift and break Swift and That's all I do. And so I'm writing very, very large amounts of Swift code every day. And whenever I hit a problem, like, this isn't right, I don't like this, I'll try and fix it. I'll work around it and I'll try a solution that sucks, try another one that sucks, I'll try many solutions. Eventually I find one I like. And I say, this solution is a great solution. And I put that online. And all I'm doing is trusting in the true Fight Club style that I am not a beautiful and unique snowflake, that there are other folks out there hitting out exactly the same problems as me. And so far, my plan works brilliantly. That's my entire plan. I'm spending my days building stuff with Swift. Here's the problems I've hit. Here's how I've solved them. Put them online and see what happens. And of course, this is challenging because, like, as you've seen, lots of things excite me. So keeping my brain focused on one thing for a while is difficult because I'm just sort of jumping around. Wow, this is neat. So yeah, it's fun.
I mean, are you a great strategist when it comes to the content you come out, or is it literally, I found that a problem yesterday, I spent all day solving it, I better just put a little post up on that type of thing?
there is no grand plan here. You're not seeing Paul the SEO expert, Paul the marketing expert, Paul the advertising expert, Paul the strategy expert. You're seeing Paul, someone who is deeply in love with building things that are fun and interesting and exciting and even clever sometimes, and then tearing them down and rebuilding them, and then explaining that to other folks. My thought process to other folks. That's all I do. There's no actual plan here. I just very much love doing what I'm doing, and I want to share that with other folks.
So something like 100 Days of Swift, which I know has helped a lot of people through this stuff. I mean, did that start out as, you got to day 4 and realized there was something to do here, or did you specifically sit down and say, I'm going to do 100 Days of Swift? And are we going to see more of that?
So that was obviously that was an attempt to try and control my brain, because when things excite me, oh wow, Swift UI 2 comes out in a month's time, I'm going to be all over that. My brain will not be able to stop myself from doing that. And sometimes when other things are happening, like Vapor or whatever it is over there, and it's interesting, I want to go and do this. But I also have to recognize people rely on me for their material a lot of the time. They want to have a structured curriculum they can follow. And one of the main problems with my site is there's no easy way of finding all my content. You can't browse it very easily, because I'm not thinking about how to structure things. I'm thinking about just what I want to get out there to the world. And so it was an attempt to squeeze my brain to stick with one thing for a little over 3 months. And it was really, really hard. And if folks ask me, I finished 100 Days Swift UI last year, December 31st, I finished. And the very same day, I had my first request for the 100 Days of Combined. And I'm not sure folks necessarily realize the workload of writing 100 days of new tutorials, videoing them, editing them, publishing them, adding quizzes, adding challenges, and more. That's what it is. These things are all online. hackingofswift.com/100/SwiftUI, or just /100 for the regular old one. And they're all videos, they're all online, they're all on YouTube, they're all text as well. There's challenges, there's milestones, quizzes, all sorts of things in there. It's a very, very large amount of effort. And that's what my brain needs, to squeeze all this mess around me into one thing, do that for a period of time. And it worked. I think people very much enjoyed it.
So 100 Days of Swift UI 2?
it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, folks.
It's so much work. It's so much work. And I spent the last 18 months releasing everything I made for free. All those videos, like 50 hours of videos, and all the articles, all the projects, all the source code, all the streams I did last year has been free. All the books I've written last year have been free. Everything has been free for the last 18 months now. I still have one more book sitting here on my laptop ready to go out, which will be free as well. At some point, obviously, I have to pay a mortgage. I'm going to look after my wife and kids a little bit. But so far, we've been doing well on our savings. So it's all been free.
Well, I'm sure at some point you'll get input that you're putting in. I hope you do.
In Swift heaven.
Okay, a couple of just very quick Swift questions, and I want to just move off of the Swift stuff just for our last few minutes. Okay, so you don't need explanation for this. Just quick off the top of your head answers will be fine. If you could put one thing into Swift, what would it be?
Async await.
Good answer. I like that answer. Well done. And if you could take one thing out of Swift, what would it be?
Multiple trailing closures.
Excellent. We will move on from there. Okay, so you've been.
That's quite that one. Best move on.
We've got 7 minutes left. It's not even worth beginning a conversation around that, because that's a rabbit hole that we will not come out of. Okay, so I just want to take us down a different path just for a moment. You have been a very vocal advocate for diversity within the community. How do you think we're doing? What more do we need to do? Are we listening? Does it feel like talking to a brick wall? What's your current feeling on that?
I think we are making progress. One thing I encourage folks in our community to do is remember that to be an iOS developer is a great privilege. I mean, really, it is. The entry level for iOS, buying a MacBook Pro or whatever, buying an iPhone to test with is very, very high compared to cheap Chromebook and JavaScript, whatever it is. So the position we are in as Apple platform developers is extremely privileged. And so we should be able to do the very, very best when it comes to diversity and inclusion. I took my daughter to PyCon last year, a local PyCon UK event, and that's obviously Python. And they had a children's day, a day just for children to come along and do coding with teacher-led workshops for kids. And PyCon, of course, is part as a richer community as Swift. But they had a free creche for all children. They had a private room for breastfeeding mothers if they wanted it. They had a sign language interpreter for everyone who needed it. They had induction loops for hearing aids. They had preferred seating for visually impaired people. They had space for guide dogs and wheelchairs. They had financial assistance grants and so forth. They were light years ahead of almost every other iOS conference. And that shouldn't be the case. And I want them to be ahead. I want them to be doing well. But I want us to be catching up with them, offering the same levels of help to people who need it. And we still have a problem. I saw a conference announced just a few months ago in the UK, I should add. Which narrows it down slightly, I should, but not be fair. I'll say what it is. They announced 30 speakers, of which only 2 were women. And that meant there were the same number of people called Chris as there were all women. And that's not in any way reflective of how our community is. And I think it also sends this horrible signal that women aren't valued as speakers. And that isn't true. And we've got to do better. We've got to listen to the serious concerns of the under-indexed groups in our community. And I feel extremely privileged and proud to have Erica Sedun, who's an extraordinary Swift contributor, co-host a podcast with me, Swift Over Coffee, because she's wonderful, she's remarkable, and she blows me away with her brains every time, and I want to see more like her. Like we saw last year at Dub What's New in Swift, we had Anna Zacks on stage, a long time contributor to Apple, who now actually helps massively. She's very senior on the Swift team, on stage in the What's New in Swift tour, which is fantastic. And I just want to get to the state where everyone can be making a difference. You haven't got to personally be one of these groups. You haven't got to be an underrepresented group to want to take action to fix this. I want everyone who's hearing this to say, yeah, okay, fine. I am, in my case, a straight white man from a rich Western country. I can still make a difference. I can still act on diversity and also inclusion.
It's sadly it's a long journey, isn't it? I mean, I haven't organised a conference for quite a few years, but this has been a challenge for a long time. We are making progress, but there's a long way to go, and we need to up our efforts. So, thank you for being a very using something of your prominence in the community to be vocal about it. I think is very important. Just very quickly.
Honestly, I'll be damned if I don't use what little position I have in our community to say this has to change. We've got to do better, and we've all got to do better.
So we literally have, according to my watch, anyway, 2 minutes left. And then we don't want to block people from lunch, although, of course, this year the queues for lunch should be quite small. I would hope. I'm hoping I'm in a queue of 1. Okay, Swift for Good. Just tell us very quickly a little bit about Swift for Good.
So Swift for Good is a new initiative I launched last year. It took me a long time to get together, over a year of planning. Check out swiftforgood.com. It's a book produced by, I think, 20 different Swift authors, folks who are bluntly my friends, who I've met from around the Swift community. Each wrote 1 chapter. So it's folks like Kaya Thomas, or Johnson Dell, or Daniel Steinberg, or Camilla Taylor, or Gina Coutin, or whatever. There are lots of folks who've each put in 1 chapter on their specialty in iOS development, in Swift development. And the end result is 1 book you can buy with 20 chapters from different people, plus an intro from Chris Latner. It gives you a huge range of experience about Swift and ideas like UIKit and Swift UI and more. And the best bit, I think the most important bit, is not a single one of us get paid. So the $40 you spend buying the book, literally all that money goes to Black Girls Code, a charity in the US doing wonderful things, running workshops for girls in under-indexed groups around the US. So they do wonderful things, and they get all the money. So we've done all this work, assembling the book, writing the text and the cover, proofreading it all, shipping it out there, updating it over time. Boom, you give us the money, it goes straight to the charity, and they benefit, and it's just fantastic.
So that's swiftforgood.com. People should go out and buy a copy,
yes,
whether you need it or not.
They should.
That's it.
Get your company to buy 5 copies. Buy it for everyone on your team, because honestly, every penny goes to charity. And what you can do if you're feeling particularly generous, many people have done this. I'm very grateful to, for example, Kate Houston bought 10 copies. And she said, listen, I'll put in $400, because it's pay what you want. I'll put in $400, give all 10 away to people who need it. So not only is she giving $400 to charity, but 10 other folks now get a huge chunk of new Swift learning. So it helps twice over. It's absolutely amazing. Thanks, Kate.
Good example from Kate. Hopefully some others will follow. Paul, 30 minutes is never long enough to chat with you, but we've reached the end of our time. Just on behalf of the community, thank you very much for all you do for it. You are a very valuable asset, what we might say here, a national treasure. One day there will be a Two Straws statue somewhere.
It is genuinely a pleasure and genuinely a privilege. It is a wonderful community doing amazing things for many, many people. And we really are making a difference to the wider world, which is exactly what I want to see.
Now, I'm sure many people are now ready for their lunch. What people don't know is on our call, there are 3 of us. And Sean, we've had to watch Sean eat his lunch while doing this this interview, which has made us very hungry. So thanks for listening, everybody. Enjoy your lunch, and we're going to hand over. Thank you.